Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are continuing our incursion to do a faction focus for all 27 factions in these index releases for Warhammer 40k 10th edition. John, I had to take a shot.
Yes.
And we've come to one that is going to be a little difficult because it's a broad scope.
It's super broad.
Sometimes I'm shocked that all these units are in one book, but we're going to give it our damnedest. Today we're going to be talking about Chaos Daemons. Which is a really big umbrella index that covers all of the Chaos Daemons for Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch, all in one book. No sub-factions, all together. It's a soup. You mishmash it all together.
Yeah, but it's chaotic of it, you know?
It is very chaotic
soup.
I gotta hand it that. Just, my mind kind of broke a little bit, like a mini demon infestation as I tried to read this. Like, just, it all goes together? Like, all of it?
Yeah, you'll be alright. Or you'll become a gibbering mess. We don't know.
I'm leaning towards gibbering mess, but...
They're always kind of a little bit of a gibbering mess. We all are. Deep down.
I'm not that deep down. John, why don't you hit us with the elevator pitch for demons, other than the fact that they're demons?
So, like, they're demons, but they're not, like, from hell as you would normally think.
Debatable.
Right. In the setting of 40k, psychic or like human will gestalts itself into a place called the Immaterium, and in there it coalesces into demons, who are basically concept made form that then come into our reality as inexplainable horrors.
That sounds awfully hellish.
It's very hellish, but like that's why they're called demons.
Okay.
So like if you're a fan of Lovecraft or Event Horizon, or a bunch of like horror, you're gonna love this, right? Because it's these concepts of like war and famine and obsession and just persistent pursuit of knowledge till it drives you mad. Like these are all prevalent in this faction, right? They have personality to them. There's loads of characters. But ultimately, where all of the flavor comes from is not from individualistic heroes, but instead them as a whole and how they impact the setting. Because they are like the manifestation of these concepts of war, pestilence, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
And it's phenomenal. And each of the demon data sheets kind of supports a type of thing.
Yeah.
In that concept.
They each have their own sort of archetype that they're playing too.
Right, which is very fun. And because they're a soup of 4 different chaos gods, there's all sorts of different options you can have. And this force, in this iteration, mostly works as a board control army.
Yes.
So you control the board and then use your tools to your best of your advantage to take the win. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so in the fluff, when demons manifest in real space, they sort of tear open a hole in reality that they squeeze themselves through, like that scene in Ace Ventura and the Rhino. And once they pop into real space, it spreads. You can't just like rip a hole in the fabric of existence and expect it to stay there.
Yes.
So as one rips through, others begin to rip through as the sort of collective weave that keeps everything separate starts to falter. And that's represented through the rule, the Shadow of Chaos. So there's a lot of words here, you could read it on the screen, but in general, what it does is this. When you go to do a mission in Warhammer 40k 10th edition, you're going to see on your deployment map that there is a blue zone, that's your zone, that's your deployment zone. You're going to see a red zone, that's usually the opponent's zone, and then sort of like a space in between, it's going to be different shapes depending on the mission. But that's no man's land. It means you don't control it, but your opponent doesn't start out controlling it either. And this rule lets you start to bring these zones under your sphere of influence as you are playing. So you automatically start controlling your deployment zone, and then if you can gain most of the objectives in No Man's Land, boom, you've corrupted No Man's Land. It's under your influence. Same thing for your opponent's deployment zone. You get most of them, boom, it's under your influence. And the key there is that once it's under your influence, it allows you to proc a number of effects in the force, in addition to just the basic rules. For example, if one of your demon units is in your Shadow of Chaos, you could add 1 to their battle shock tests, because they're sort of emboldened by the energies that are leaking through from the Immaterium. And if you pass, you get one model gets to heal D3 wounds, which can be hugely annoying.
Yeah, very good.
Just hugely annoying. I have felt that pain before. And then sneakily is Demonic Terror. So your opponent's units that are in your Shadow of Chaos are going to get -1 to their battle shock test, and when they fail, they take D3 mortals. And there are a lot of other things that are going to play off of this or trigger this. But this is the basics. And the army is sort of built around this core idea of controlling the board and corrupting different spaces.
Absolutely.
But secondarily, I mean, there's more you can do than just corrupt a space. You can rip out of it. And that leads to their detachment rule for demonic incursion called Warp Rifts.
Yeah, and Warp Rifts just... It's exactly what you think it is, right? If you're inside of the Shadow of Chaos, you can rip open as a demon and come out. Something that demons all get is something called Deep Strike, which allows you to start in reserves and come onto the table at a later time. What Warp Rifts lets you do is if you choose to do that, instead of having to be 9 inches away from all enemy models, you can be 6.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, like you get much more likely charges directly at Deep Strike. It allows you to position yourself easier. It allows you to get even more board control, right? It allows you to keep pushing forward. You're going to have some demons in Deep Strike. They're all going to be on the table. And this lets you put them where you want them and don't have to make as many hard choices about where you can and cannot put them. It is perfect. And it is exactly what Chaos Daemons wants.
And the art on page 2 for this is nutty. Just
yeah, it's phenomenal.
Wow. Huge fan. I hate it, but great job.
It's phenomenal.
And I think Demons was one of them, was kind of difficult to pick a unit from, because for us, when we talk about these factions, we don't like to talk about every war scroll just for the sake of time and our own knowledge base. But we try to pick one each that we feel is representative of the force, either its strength or a weakness or a playstyle. And for Demons, each of the Chaos Gods, so Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, their little forces that are in here all have a very different flavor. So it's hard to find something that feels holistically representative. But we did our best and either picked stuff we liked or still thought were good. John, what demon are you picking?
I'm picking something that I both love and I also think is very good.
Cool.
And that is the Skull Cannon.
Oh, right? Love it.
So much of what Khorne brings is melee, right? Mm-hmm. Melee is the god of slaughter and honor in combat. But the Skull Cannon shoots flaming skulls like this is Doom at people. And it's amazing.
And it looks like it's from the cover of a Dio album.
It does, absolutely. It got tougher this edition. I mean, T9 is nothing to scoff at. Mm-hmm. It has 9 wounds, which is pretty good, and a 4-up involve. So this is really hard to take down. What makes it even harder to take down is that it's going to be roughly 48 inches away from anything that's shooting at. Because that's the range it has on its gun.
So far.
Yeah, and the gun doesn't do a ton of damage. It does enough. It's really good at killing like 2 wound infantry, and the blast rule makes it really good at like killing like mulching hordes. But what makes it even better is that in your shooting phase, after it has shot with its Skulls of the Fallen ability, that unit has to take a battle shock test. And if in your Shadows of Chaos, and they fail that, they're going to take D3 additional wounds. That's very good. And they're normally pretty easy to squeeze in to your list. And with demons, you're going to want to put a lot of stuff in Deep Strike. This you really don't want to. You want to start this on the table, which means you'll have threats immediately for your opponent.
Especially if you could sit it on like a back objective somewhere pretty far, where you know it can do something for you in addition to shoot, because you know you're getting an objective point, but also it's gonna rain hell, literally.
Yeah. And I think a lot of longer range pieces, people are like, oh, I'll just charge it. Like, I'll deep strike over there and charge it. If you deep strike and charge this thing, it's still a corn demon. It's gonna eat you alive. I mean, it still has 6 attacks at pretty hefty damage. So you gotta dedicate to killing this thing.
Yeah. I gotta say, I'm a fan. This force, well, at least the corn bit, doesn't have much threat range, so that's a nice little add. For me, though, I'm going a little beefier for my pick. I'm going with some fluff. I'm going with a little undersung utility. I gotta come up at you with the Beast of Nurgle.
Oh yeah? The disease puppy?
Yeah, you know, the good doggy, the little puppy dog in the fluff. These guys are very, very kind. And they love everyone. And they don't actually want to kill anybody, even though they totally do. They just want to play with you and make friends. But their friends are fragile, and that's a problem. And, I mean, you can see it on the screen. It's not a very complicated war scroll. It's not. I mean, very quickly you get to grips with it. But I think it has a purpose in the Force that is going to maybe be missed by some people. Most of everything in this index triggers off of the Shadow and the Warp, right? I think it's Shadows of Chaos. It triggers off of that. So if you aren't in that, you aren't getting your extra buff, your extra triggers, your extra abilities, which makes them less effective when you're pushing up into territory you don't control yet, and that could be a little feel-baddy. The Beast of Nurgle does not have that problem. It does not care that you don't have Shadows of Chaos. It does not matter. It's going to do its job anyway, and you could deep strike it, which again, if you do put it in Shadows of Chaos, is 6 inches away. But the thing that this does for you is, one, it does have an objective control of 2, so it can take some objectives, and it can fish for mortal wounds on its attacks. But the thing that makes it very frustrating for an opponent is that it's a meat shield.
Absolutely.
In an army that is not very tanky, if we're being honest, this is an absolute meat shield. Yeah, I mean, you can see it there. It's got 7 wounds at toughness 9. That's one just by itself. That's a lot of beef to try to chop through, depending on what kind of unit is trying to charge through it. And secondarily, it's risky to try to kill it because of grotesque regeneration. Let's say you put this between your opponent and your really high value stuff. You deep strike it in. Boom. Now it is an anchor to stop your opponent's charges. They charge it. They deal 6 wounds to it. Normally, whatever. It's got 1 wound left. We'll finish it next turn. Not so much. It's going to come back to full health.
Yeah, and on top of that, your opponent doesn't really want to be dedicating too much fire to it.
No, absolutely not. They don't want to attack this. But if you deploy it smartly, they have to.
Yeah, and with that rule, you can't just shoot a couple of guardsmen at it and be done with it. Like, you have to send like an actual amount of firepower into it to kill it.
Yeah, I think
it's very good.
It's probably we haven't seen points yet, but if it's not very expensive, I think I would include 1 or 2 of these in my forces, just to act as a buffer for my high value stuff that I really think you would do well to keep safe.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to like the tip, right? Like, we keep trying to put in tips in every one of these videos to like help you along with figuring out the rest of the forces you're going to collect. I think the tip here with Chaos Demons is that you really kind of want to pick 2 of the demon categories. So you want to pick either Khorne and Nurgle or like Tzeentch and Slaanesh, and you kind of want to mix those 2 together and then leave a little bit of room to take utility pieces from the others.
Yes.
Right? Like, you might take a bunch of Tzeentch, like casters and wizards for some ranged firepower, and some Slaanesh to be like fast and grab objectives where you shoot people off of. But then you still probably want to include a couple of Beasts of Nurgle to have roaming around to keep your Tzeentch from getting just obliterated in combat.
That's largely what I had, actually. Mine was worded as don't build too thin. You know, there's...
Yeah.
If you looked at this book, you might be misled to think, oh, I'll just bring like an equal number of each Chaos God. But I don't think that would work very well. I really think if you did that, you would find yourself too thin at trying to do most of the things you're trying to accomplish. So I think John's right. You really want to focus like 2 of them and then just have a couple of little cute pocket picks that you think are fun. And that is how you can kind of maestro this thing to get the victories where your opponent might not be able to see them. While Demons is a complicated faction, I hope that breaks them down fairly easily for everybody out there. And if you're interested in them, I highly recommend deep diving all the War Scrolls. There's a ton of options in there that really might bring it home for you. And if Demons doesn't work for you, and maybe that's not your flavor pitch after hearing this video, don't worry. Where the next video we're going, we don't need eyes to see. We're going to keep... that was a good one.
It was a good one. I'll give you that one. You're allowed to have that one.
He hates my jokes. He liked that one. But we're going to be doing more of these, and maybe the next one that we're going to come out with is for you. If you do have any specific questions, though, on this force or any other, because some of these are real complicated, the comments are open down below, and the socials are always open. Feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help y'all. And for now, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.